Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Life Chronicles and Deep Dives podcast. I'm here with Coach Cornelia, all the way in Romania.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Today is a big episode. It's episode 25. So we've done a whole lot of podcasts. We've done 25 episodes so far. We've just been trying to stick through it. There's been some times where we've had to stop because life gets in the way. There's stuff happening across the globe, and we have to step away from the podcast, family. And, I just wanted to say thank you to all of our viewers for sticking with us to this benchmark of 25 episodes. I'd also like to say thank you to my co host, executive producer, and editor, Cornelia, all the way in Romania. Please drop a like for this video, specifically for her, the hard work that she puts in to edit, create the title cards, do all of the work to finish the episode, to get it up, even when she's got a whole bunch of stuff going on where she's at right now. Please drop a like for that video. Please drop a comment in the comment section below and thank her for her continued dedication.
Thank you, Mike. I didn't know we are going to start with something emotional. I wouldn't have come today either.
Yes, I really wanted to put that in there for like a benchmark because like you do a lot, like you take a lot of the heavy lifting of the episode production under your belt. So that's definitely something that needs to be recognized, especially when we hit a big benchmark like 25. So
yeah, it's good, actually. I also have to thank you if we are to the thanking part because you are so patient with me. I'm not sure I could be that patient. So thank you so much, Micah.
Absolutely. This episode, we're going to talk about defending yourself. This could be from a manipulative person. This could be just in general. But in order to discuss defending yourself, we have to discuss different techniques that you might see that you're going to encounter. So let's cover provocative statements. Let's start with that one. Provocative statements is when somebody says something knowingly and willingly to irritate another party. So they'll say it. It's not like they're saying it in a way to like prove a point or to do this to engage in discourse. It's generally designed to irritate the other person, whether to make them look bad, to get, supply or energy from a feel good feeling from making somebody else feel agitated. So that's a big thing, and you will see that a lot.
Oh, yeah. Especially lately when everyone has a different opinion and they don't know how to. I don't know. I mean, this social media incentivize some behaviors, and sometimes we become bullies as well. So everyone is a bully in certain circumstances, and it's good to know how to recognize these behaviors and how to stop it. Because if we don't stop it, it's gonna drain us at one point. And it's very hard. We talked about this in a different podcast. It's very hard to start putting some limits to stand up for yourself. And I thought that maybe this is a good time when we should all understand that we are allowed to have our own opinions, our own decisions, our own likes and dislikes without being treated bad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to know how to stand for ourselves, and we should start with recognizing these kind of behaviors of manipulating techniques. Like some people might try to offend you just by saying a joke, and then if you get angry, they say, it was just a joke, why are you getting angry? These kind of people. Yeah, or they can try to gaslight you and tell you that it's just something that you think it happened like this, but it didn't. So there's so many things that we should learn to recognize, how to recognize, and then we can start defending ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Gaslighting is another great example because it is basically like if you are engaging with somebody with sociopathy, narcissistic personality disorder, or tendencies, right? You will encounter gaslighting. It's like it's a given. But what you can find is typically when they're lying or they're trying to hide something, that's when you can see the gaslighting come into effect. Being able to recognize it is sometimes takes time, but being able to recognize it and then stand up for yourself in the face of the gaslighting is extremely important. It's also extremely hard, especially when you've been in a relationship with an individual for a long time. But even at the societal level, being gaslighted by officials or people that you hold in high esteem can be very hard on the subject or the person that's listening to the gaslighting, because they have to discern between what's being said and what actually happened, and then stick with what actually happened in the face of what's being said. And it may be something that they're repeating constantly or hearing constantly, and they still have to maintain that sovereign mind.
That's very hard. It is very hard. Even for me, and I guess even for you, even though we know these things happen, how to spot manipulator and so on, it's still very hard to when you have this information coming so many times over you, even if it's from officials or someone you live with or a family member or whatever, a friend, it's still hard to keep your ground and um, to maintain what you believe, what you think it happened, what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very hard. I think it's very important also to in this process of you work a lot with persons that are victims of narcissistic abuse. I was wondering, do they realize in the relationship, do they realize that they are manipulated or afterwards?
So sometimes it takes like an awakening or like stumbling across information. For me specifically, somebody told me that what I was dealing with sounded like narcissistic abuse, and I was dealing with a narcissistic abuser. I started looking into it, connecting the dots. It was like a big revelation, like a huge encyclopedia opened up, and I was just able to find all this information that specifically detailed instances in my relationship. So in some cases, it may be an epiphany event like that. Sometimes it takes a long time for a victim or survivor to be able to recognize that. Other times, it's super easy, right? So people of great discernment may be like, okay, well, this happened. And then the gaslighters say, no, it happened this way. It didn't happen like that. The person of great discernment will be like, okay, well, that doesn't sound right. And they will challenge the gaslighter. The gaslighter will then step up, ramp up the gaslighting. It's just whether or not the other person can maintain that resilience. And that is part of defending yourself, standing up for yourself. In this case, sometimes it is, and we'll talk about this later. Well, I guess we can talk about it now. It is sometimes dangerous to stand up to somebody that has narcissistic personality disorder or sociopathic, psychopathic tendencies, because they see it as a threat to their dominance. They see it as a threat to their essentially their life, their image, their personality. Like they're anytime you stand up against somebody like that, they see it as a threat. So they attack. So in some cases, it's better to make an exit, and we'll talk about this definitely later in the process. Sometimes it's better to walk away from a situation than it is to engage in the situation. And walking away in and of itself is could be considered standing up for yourself in a way. It's setting a boundary, saying I'm not going to be dealing with this. I'm not going to be subject to this kind of communication, and then you cut it off. So that could be a way to stand up for yourself.
It is, but it's also very hard. So dealing with this kind of people, it's hard to start with. So everything you have to go through to get rid of them or to put some limits is gonna be hard. That's for sure. And this is why I asked you about how they realize that they are manipulated, because I think that sometimes you need support, and it's very important not to isolate yourself, because many people are isolating themselves, even starting from the school when a child is bullied. and the child decides, I'm not going to tell this at home, I'm not going to speak to the teachers, and this isolation just brings you more and more putting you more and more down because you don't talk to anyone. There's no one to bring you on the right way, let's say it, telling you that this is not normal, you should get out of it, and so on. And it happened to me just like with you. I had a friend over, and my husband came home, my ex-husband came home, and I didn't realize, but she told me afterwards, after a few days, do you realize what kind of behavior do you have when you heard the keys in the door? And I said, no, I didn't realize this. And she said, you got really scared and you changed completely. And this was my first moment when I realized, and I thank her even today for this huge help, like opening my eyes, because I didn't even realize the state I was in. So support is very important. Talk to someone you trust. Don't isolate yourself from your family, from your friends. It's very
Absolutely.
important.
So, I mean, that's one of the big tricks of the manipulation is that you don't recognize that you're being manipulated. And sometimes it takes somebody else to, bring that into your line of sight. Sometimes it's instinctual. It's like a feeling, right? So you're like, like when you ever hear somebody like I felt like something was off about that individual, right? But I ignored it, right? That's your
Yeah,
instinct letting you know that there could be something off that, you can either choose to follow with it or don't. I tend to trust my instincts. And I'm just making a suggestion that if you viewers ever get that feeling that you're being manipulated, kind of look into it, research it, and kind of look to see if those techniques kind of fit. You can look up different techniques for manipulation. I know we're touching on just a few here, but what I would like to get into is why standing up for yourself matters. So this is something, and I've been working on like a series of narcissistic abuse recovery, and one of the topics, my next topic to make, um, is going to be about building confidence after abuse. So when you stand up for yourself, you build self-respect and confidence. I mean, so that's like a big deal. You're affirming your worth, not just to yourself, but to somebody else, and you're setting a precedent for how others should treat you. If you just let things slide constantly, you're going to bottle up frustration, and you're going to basically feel that you're constantly being, taken advantage of. You can't do anything. And it's a self defeating prophecy because if you never stand up for yourself, you will never build that confidence it takes to not allow the manipulation or abuse to continue.
for sure. It's so important to have self-worth, but first of all, I mean, the parents and the family should be the first to give this to us. And they, most of the times they don't, maybe because they don't know how to do it, or just they're used to this crazy life and don't take the time to teach us that we are worthy. So we have to build this by ourselves. And the first thing we should do is just admit that we are worthy. We don't need arguments for it. We are, because we are human beings, we deserve to have a happy life, right? So this should be the first step to work on your self-worth, your self-confidence, because it's important. They go hand in hand. Having self-confidence means that you can step up and say, I don't agree with this, I don't accept this kind of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very important to have self-worth. Very, very important. It's one of the main things that I mean, when you feel that you don't deserve anything good, you just how to put this, you just you are very thankful with just crumbs, right? If someone makes you a very small pleasure or a very small service or a very small favor, you feel so grateful beyond imaginary, while a person who's having self-worth wants from 10 jewelries, let's say, as a woman, she wants a specific one, not any jewelry. And if you don't bring her that jewelry, she's not going to be satisfied about it, which I feel that is great for a woman to be able to stand up for what she wants, even if it's about a jewelry. It's the same for men. Um, I talked about this about men, and I was watching a documentary yesterday how this world was 200 years ago, and everything that was built by men, not women, men. And no one is talking about it. It's so annoying for, at least for me, it's very annoying because I think if I had a son or I have a brother, for example, who's working hard and no one is praising him. You know, we are always talking about how a woman should be treated. Maybe we should talk about how men should be treated. You as a man have been, you've been a victim of narcissistic abuse, right? So men can be victims as well.
Mhm. And so, but it took me some time to develop the confidence, to regain confidence, because I had confidence before the relationship, and then she whittled it away, destroyed, even tried to destroy me, and then I had to rebuild myself from that experience. I'm but stronger. So it builds that like strong personality, that strong, right? And people that are opinionated, outspoken, right? They have the confidence to be outspoken. They have the, it's like setting a boundary. And we've talked about this previously in other podcasts. We talked about it in this podcast. It's communicating how I'm not going to be, how I'm not going to tolerate just any thing. You're talking about women with the jewelry, right? So women have the ability to be more selective than men in today's society. But men also get put in this, like, I don't know, it's almost like they're trying to emasculate
Yeah.
men.
Mhm.
And so when men do stand up for themselves, because society has shifted the view of what men and women should be, a man standing up for himself is seen as a negative rather than a positive. And so you're hearing like this toxic masculinity. I've heard it on our news stations over here constantly. They're talking about toxic masculinity, toxic masculinity. That specific toxic masculinity, strong men, strong opinions, strong, this is survival. It's not, it's
Yeah.
instinctual. It's not something that, I mean, you can train it out of people, but when you do, you don't have a strong society. You have weak men, which leads to a weak society. So, I mean, it's interesting to watch this dynamic unfold.
And it's also a manipulation because if you think about it, and I think it's gaslighting at its best, because when you think about it, like a few years, 10, 20 years ago, maybe in Europe, maybe sooner, you had this the man was the head of the family, he was the provider, the woman was in her energy, like feminine energy, he was in the masculine energy, and somehow through these manipulation techniques they managed to change, to shift everything. Now a woman is proud to be more masculine, a man should be more feminine, um and everything is presented like it's normal, so it's hard to keep track of our own opinions in this situation. It's very hard to go back to what's normal and what's not normal.
Absolutely. It is because you will have to stand up against a significant resistance to
Mhm.
return to what was, and they call it, like, they call it being progressive or changing with the world. But if you look at the top level of society, the top CEOs, very cutthroat. The top, of government, politicians, very cutthroat. They're not changing who they are. They're just asking people below them to change who they are. And to me, it's just a way to subjugate people further. When we
Mm.
talked previously about putting people into victim boxes, and that's another way to manipulate and control them. What you are seeing is people standing up to those, being categorized in those boxes. You're seeing people resist being emasculated. You're seeing, women. You're seeing women stand up against other women who are shaming them for whatever values that they have. It's very interesting. And so when we talk about standing up for yourself and defending yourself, we also need to make the distinction between defending yourself and being defensive.
Yeah, that's true, very important. So the difference between being defensive or defending yourself is just like being reactive or calm. And I'm gonna get back to this in a second, but you said something very important. They try to make us weak. All the manipulators in our lives, this is their main reason to do everything they do, making us weak. So that's something we should be very aware of. Standing for ourselves also means to be very strong. Like you said, strong, opinionated, or even if you don't say what's your opinion anymore, you just keep it to yourself, but you stand your ground and you act conformly with what you think. And going back now to being defensive and defending yourself, it's two very different things. When we are defensive, it means that we are reacting very strongly, like it's not true, what you said is not true, I don't care about it, leave me alone, these kind of things. When you are standing up for yourself, it's when you say, I won't accept this kind of behavior, I don't want to do this, it's not for me, and so on. So it's very important to make this difference, because when we become reactive, we give them what they want. That's what they want, to get some energy from our angriness or whatever it's called.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about being strong in who you are. You can have an opinion. You can be strong with that opinion, which I am, which you are. And it's about being able to convey that outward, right? That confidence, that self-determination to carry your word out into society. And so like that's different. Where somebody that's defensive uh is constantly feeling the attack. So you're right, they react, they're in a reactionary state of mind, usually an emotional state of mind, rather than a logical state of mind. And it can blend. So you can see somebody that is standing up for themselves, being assertive. Is another good word for this, and
Mhm.
having passion about what they're standing up for. There's a difference between somebody that's having passion for what they're standing up for, and being on the defensive or being defensive, which is under a constant state of attack, from an outside source. And so, like, if you're able to tell, if somebody comes to you and says something and you don't agree with it, and you can say, I don't agree with it, here's why. Um, and then they, I don't know, try to provoke you, use a provocative statement to try to provoke you further. And you can say, all right, well, that's not how this is going to be. I'm not going to stand for this. This is my point. This is my opinion. This is how I believe and see it to be true. And that's it. That's where we're at. You can be passionate through that delivery system. However, if somebody comes to you and they start provoking you and then you attack them, right? Not about the topic that they're talking about something else. Um, Usually it's in an emotional state. You're lashing out, calling bad names, something like that. That's in the reactionary state. Um, you can see this across the globe, where people specifically now are becoming more reactionary rather
Mhm.
than, passionate. And I think that's a big difference. Definitely something that needs to be made distinctive. Defending yourself is about asserting your rights and values, whereas being defensive is constant lashing out in retaliation, in reaction to something else. And
Mhm.
manipulators want you in that state, whether
Yeah.
they can make you look bad, whether they can, whatever reason, they want you in that state because it's easier to control you if you're in a reactionary state of mind than if you're a sound mind in logic.
Oh yeah, they do. Exactly what happens these days in the society. If you have this is something that made me decide for the moment not to talk about anymore about my opinions about what's happening, because it's impossible to bring arguments right now in front of some part of society. Even if you are trying to be assertive and only talk on the topic, right? And say what you think about it, what's your conclusion on some things, they will come back with this constant offending you and naming you names and so on. So this is a situation where, like you said, you have to just say what you have to say and then leave.
Mhm.
Don't justify yourself, don't talk too much about it, don't get into that turmoil, that energy, that emotional energy that it brings chaos, I think, in the world right now, and in relationships as well, because when you get into a fight, it's never ending. Like with this kind of people, you will never finish. What I tell my clients so many times lately, don't take it personal. It's so important to detach ourselves from the situations and not take personal, because even though you think that someone has something with you personal, it's not your business. So don't take it personal. It's their problem. Don't take it on you. Just be detached. And when you are detached and you feel that I have nothing to lose, like my ego, or because when you are defensive, it's about your ego, like you feel hurt or something like this. It's not your ego. It's not your problem what the other one thinks. They attack you, they are being mean with you, it's not your problem. So don't take it personal and just remove yourself from the situation. It's very hard, Micah. It is very hard because sometimes you just we have one episode of the podcast I decided not to deliver on YouTube. And one of the reasons is that I don't want to get into this forever discussion about how I think about some things that are happening in the world. And it is very hard to take such a decision because I want to say how I feel, I want to bring my opinions. But at the same time, I know it's not the moment right now. It's not worthy. People are not listening anymore to each other.
Mhm.
So, and it happens in the families, it happens in your relationships and with the parents, with the kids. We are not listening anymore that much as we used to before because we have this social media thing going on. We have a lot of series on Netflix and so on. We don't have the time to listen, and we just, I don't know. Sometimes I feel it's like the internet is like a huge place where everyone is dejecting. You know.
Mhm. I mean, and a lot of people can because they can hide behind the screen, they can hide behind the keyboards, and it just becomes a big you see it like in posts. Somebody will make a post on social media, and somebody will respond, and somebody will attack that response, and then it's back and forth, and it's just a never-ending cycle. You're trying to draw a pair, like you're watching people try to draw parallels. You're trying to you're trying to get this communication across. Both sides are trying to communicate, but they're not communicating in the same wavelength. So then both arguments are basically just it'd be like two people standing facing each other, trying to convince each other of their side while punching each other in the face at the same time.
Mhm.
So
Very
you know
good example.
it doesn't work. So you brought up something, and I know you're talking, and we'll be very careful on this topic. So you have expressed at a point that you don't want to air an episode that we had previously recorded. I respect that, and so that is knowing when to stand up for yourself, right? So at this point, you know that you have this opinion, but you also know that, like, I mean, it could be unsafe for this opinion, right, to be out. And so like that is something that is also that we need to take into account. You need to assess the stakes of what you're trying to, stand up for, right? So it could be let's say if it's a situation like you're in, you've assessed the stakes and said, okay, it's not okay for me to go forward at this time. It's not the right time. Okay, there are other times, and this is not specific to you, where, let's say somebody is like aggressive towards you, they're, disrespectful, they're manipulating. Is it one-off, or is it a pattern? So now you have to decide, is this a one-off thing that we can just say, okay, hey, look, that's not cool? Or is it something that we're saying, hey, that's not cool, hey, that's not cool, hey, that's not cool, hey, that's not cool, to the same person, right? So we need to look at that and determine whether or not it is worth the battle. And so that's like, I guess that's the catchphrase for this. Pick
Mhm.
your battles. Know which ones that you can and can't win. Know when to walk away. And that also has to be decided through your moral, fabric. So like, where are you morally? Where are you on, your personal journey in terms of logic, in terms of your values, in determining if what somebody is saying to you, or if uh, what is being said is worth engaging with. Because sometimes silence is stronger than, words, right? Sometimes not arguing can be stronger than arguing with them. In fact, if you argue with an individual in this realm that's trying to manipulate, you actually are falling into the trap that you discussed
Mhm.
previously, where they can do that. Another thing to look at is whether or not they are who they are to you. Because this is nobody on the street. Are we talking to a protester of some sort? Are we interviewing somebody? Is this a friend? Is this a family member? Where do they fall in line with your, circle, right? Are they in your inner circle, outer circle, non-existent circle? You know what I mean? Like at some point in time, you have to discern whether or not, I don't even need to expend the energy arguing with these people. That's how I feel about the social media posts. I see people arguing, even, online. I see them arguing, they make a point. Somebody will make a point that I don't agree with, but I really just don't feel like spending the energy to, lay out my side, my facts, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's something that you have to do. And that's part of knowing when to stand up for yourself.
Sometimes it's not the good moment, not the right moment. And I'm waiting for the right moment to express myself in this topic. But you said something like, when you start to respond to a manipulator, you can get trapped.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I would like to add, and trashed. Because imagine we are like, before having the narcissistic relationship, I see myself like a white, innocent piece of paper, let's say, okay? And then I got into this relationship, and I didn't, like you said, this instinct was there. I knew that something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it until that friend came and told me some things that she saw. And I still didn't leave. I still wanted to fix things. I wanted to show that I don't know, to show that I don't deserve it. I worth more, and so on. And I trashed myself in this relationship so much that I came out so, like, imagine, from that white piece of paper, I was just something very ugly and dirty. And it's very hard to clean it, to clean all this bad energy, all this suffering, all these bad words you're getting, and so on, and to become like white, let's say, again,
Mm-hmm.
like clean. And I felt that my soul was very dirty. That's how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I would advise anyone: don't get into this dirt. That it means just throwing words from here to there, getting in huge fights. It doesn't matter if it's your partner or family member or whatever, someone in politics that has a different opinion from you. It doesn't matter. Sometimes it's not worth it to dirt yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you can find better moments to express yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm waiting for at this point.
You bring up a good point. There's two aspects to this that I'd like to touch on. One is the fact that, like, if you engage with these people, right, like a manipulator specifically, but I mean, it could be somebody that's provoking you, or,
Mhm.
whatever.
Yes. It can be bullies as
right?
well. Yeah.
They're trying to, we talked about projection in the past. They're dumping, right? Their negativity outward onto somebody else.
Hmm.
Call it dumping shit, right? So they do this, and then they want you to hold that energy, right? What I found is, and this is a real life experience, is that when they were trying to agitate me, uh, if I stayed calm and I was like, okay, I get it, I understand, I get it. As soon as I stayed on that line, they got irate and they yelled at me and retaliated immediately. Like I wasn't getting angry with them. I was listening to what they were saying, and I wasn't necessarily agreeing with it, but I also wasn't engaging at the same
Hmm.
time. I wasn't arguing against it. I was just saying, I get it. And this individual went off and yelled, I get it, back at me, got irate, got in their car, slammed their car, yelled at me out of the car. It was interesting to see.
Hmm.
And so there's that aspect of it that is, that you can sometimes see. Like if you can stay calm, you know, in most cases, right? An abuse victim may not always know what reality is because of the abuse, but once they start to develop that discernment, when they start to like research into it, or somebody tips them off, or like there's some help externally, they can start to look at where they need to stand their ground. And usually that starts in here, right? So if you once you get a strong mind, then working towards strong mind, then you can start outwardly expressing strong mind. And that is different. And when you can't, you have to know when to walk away.
True. Regarding that experience that you talked about, I think all when they want something from you, they want a reaction, a huge reaction, like fireworks. You don't get it, you don't deliver it, so they get very angry. If you would have gotten angry, they become calm,
Um,
right? Because they got what they wanted from you. This is why I said don't take it personal. It's all about them, the others, and what they want. And it's very, very important for our mental health, because it's, from my experience, from your experience, it's very hard to get out of it and just recover yourself. And at least in my situation, it was very hard to find my normal. What's normal? That's what I was asking my friends. What is this normal? What is normal? Mom, is this normal? Because I didn't know what's normal anymore.
During
Yeah.
my exit from my relationship from my narcissistic ex, and I took on the narcissistic family cult, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was doing all this research, I was watching all these videos, I was reading all these articles. I was like listening to all these people talk about like narcissistic abuse, like what it is, and dark triad personalities. And in order for me to figure out the puzzle, I am willing to sacrifice a lot in order to solve a puzzle, right? So for me, it was about figuring out how to get into a place to figure out the puzzle. And part of that was, I had to be reactionary. I had to fall into that place. I think instinctually my body reacts opposite generally to the way that somebody wants me to react. I have a friend of mine that likes to be provocative in a playful way, but usually I react the opposite of the way they want to react, and then they get kind of disappointed about that, right?
Mhm.
And so when I was in my relationship, it was the same thing, and that to her was a big threat because my instinct internally, I was just doing what I was just doing, rather than responding to what I was just responding instinctually rather than responding, in an emotional state originally, right? That was a threat that made me a target. However,
Mm.
that same skill allowed me to blend with stay in my instincts, but still basically play a role
Mm-hmm.
effort to find out the truth. So while they were attacking me and I was in a reactionary state of mind, I was still picking up on the differences between what they were saying and what they were doing. And I was making mental notes of that in an effort to, stay strong within myself. Because if they're saying this one thing, but then they're behaving different, that's a big key indicator to a manipulation. And so I was trying to soak up every instance of that so I could log it, so I could connect dots. And I'm not saying that putting yourself in this situation in an effort to do that is a good thing. It's probably not the most healthy thing to do.
And it might be also dangerous sometimes.
And it might be dangerous, but I was willing to do it to solve the puzzle. But once I realized that there was nothing else that I could say or do to change the course of action that was happening, I decided to not play. And this has two factors. One is that this individual wants some things that they can't have. They also want you to be involved emotionally. They want to be able to dump their negativity onto you. But if you walk away, you get to save your energy for battles that matter rather than all of these things that don't. You get to decide which hills are worth dying, right? Uh, and like you said it here, sometimes the other parties are not open to reason. They're openly hostile, dismissive. They're yelling, they're, I don't know, burning Teslas or Tesla stations. And you know what I mean? Like that is not open to reason. So disengaging could actually be the stronger move. It's strategically the stronger move at that point in time. And it also allows you to do a couple of things. Protect your peace. It allows
Mm-hmm.
you to maintain some level of inner sovereignty in silence. You get to distance yourself from constantly being on defense from somebody who's attacking you. And this is especially important because some people cannot yet make the strength position to be defensive. Uh, they're reactionary with it. They're
Yeah.
not defending themselves. They're not standing up for themselves. They're not strong enough yet to do that. So sometimes walking away, not isolating per se, but walking away from a bad situation is usually the best. And when I did walk away, I didn't even say anything. She took me to court and she tried to say a whole bunch of stuff to provoke me in court.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had an attorney with me at the time, defense attorney, and I didn't say one word. Uh, and I won my case. Case was
Mm-hmm.
dismissed. So, I mean, if that was the power of silence, it's like I defeated this individual without even saying a word in court.
Yes. And we should say again that it wasn't easy what you've done. It wasn't easy what I've done. It's not easy to get out of it. It's not easy. Sometimes you don't have the resources to get out of it. You might, because in let's talk about a relationship, they might make you depend on them so they can control you and manipulate you. So it is very hard to get out of it. But if someone is watching now in this situation and recognizes some things from what we've said, they should know first of all that it's not their fault. It's not it's always the abuser's fault. It's not I mean, I used to think that I have a problem um in my ex relationship. I thought I was the problem because he was telling me all the time that I was the problem. So don't let them be your inner voice. Don't believe what they're saying about you. Uh and get support. I think it's very important when you don't have resources, when you depend on that manipulator, get support. It's very, very important.
Mm-hmm. So,
And of course, they are trying, like your ex did. They're trying to provoke you further, right? Taking you to court. My ex-husband was coming to my new place and trying to talk to me all the time, and I guarded myself with all of my friends and family. because I didn't want to get into that. And you know why, Micah? It's because, at least that's my opinion, it might not be true, but they will never change. I mean, if someone stays in this kind of relationship hoping that the other one is going to change, that's impossible. I know it's hard to believe it, but they will never change. They will always try to find a new victim. If it's not, it's going to be someone else. Yeah. So
So let me ask you this: over in Europe, I don't know if society is geared different, right? So I don't know, protests might be different. I mean, even just walking down the street could be different over where you're at in both countries or any country you've been to. So um, I've heard in Europe that people are like overly polite.
Mhm.
Now, how does that play out in terms of standing up for yourself out in public? Let's say at a grocery store or something like that. Is that a factor?
It depends on the country. So, for example, I can speak more about Denmark and Romania because I lived for many years in both of the countries. In Denmark, everyone is gonna avoid conflict. For them, the mental health is first priority. So they're gonna avoid the conflict. If someone touches you just a little bit, they're gonna turn around and say, "I'm sorry, please excuse me, I didn't mean to. Please, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." So you will never see an open conflict, even if you have different ideas with, for example, the other parents at school. If they have different ideas about the topic, they will never talk about it. They will never get into conflict. They respect your opinion. They have theirs, and they stop there. In Romania, being Eastern country and we are Latins, like Italians and French, we get very angry. You know, the Romanians are getting very angry. Like on the smallest, like the smallest thing can bring a huge reaction.
Mhm. Okay.
So you don't see this often, but it's more often than in Latin countries like Italy, France, Romania. You will see more people get offended more easily and can get huge reactions.
Okay.
Like, I mean, you can see a driver on the street getting so angry that they go out with a bat and try to beat the other ones, and the other ones are calling some friends and start to fight and so on.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess the distinction would be made between somebody that's like withholding because they're not confident, or they're withholding because they're, you know, not strong to voice an opinion, right? They're not strong opinionated or strong worded or whatever, versus a society that is more polite, more non confrontational, and a society that is more direct, more confrontational. So, I mean, I want to make that distinction between the three different things, just because it may be different where you're located, where any of our viewers are located. Like, I've heard that in England that they're exceptionally polite over there. They may not say anything at all. Um,
Yeah.
they may, and so I want to get into something here, and we'll talk about this a little bit. And it's called it's a concept of too much empathy, right? So we've got in societies now, in the United States, across the globe, this progressive, empathetic policies that are being enacted by the government officials, or, people that are in charge of other people. And what happens is that those policies are actually hurting other people, but the empathy doesn't go both ways. It only goes one direction, and it's fake empathy, right? But it's also society can be taught this empathy, and what happens is that people then uh, they're like too giving. And if you know anything about behavior and psychology, behavior is guided by incentives and fear, among other things. And when you incentivize a behavior, people will go to that. So
Yeah.
in and at that point, you've trained a society to accept less than they deserve. And when they do
Hmm.
stand up, they're attacked for standing up for what their society really is. I saw a video where a lady was defending the United States because it was mostly white people. It was. mostly white people, right? But when you import millions of people into the United States that are incentivized to come here through programs, payments, whatever the government in the previous administration, flying them in or shipping them across the border or releasing them on the taxpayer's dime, you've incentivized the behavior for them to come here. But then you've also let those people hurt the very people you're supposed to be protecting that are paying for it. And some of those people are paying doubly. They're losing lives, property, young girls. I mean, there's all manner of things where that could be uh, dangerous to have that level of empathy or that level of, I'd say it's like false virtuosity.
Yeah, yeah, it is false. That's how I feel it. Uh, when someone says today, oh wow, about, let's say there is a very well-known guy over there who became a woman in the last years and is very, I don't know, very popular among these kind of progressists. And when he wants to be called she, okay, I'm gonna respect this. When she comes and does a video, everyone is just like in, I mean, it's the reaction is too much. Like, you are so gorgeous, you are so special. You are no, you can see that she's a man. You can see it. No matter what she's doing, she's gonna be a man always. You can, I mean, you can say I support whatever what you're doing or your decisions or so on. Shouldn't be like, I mean, this empathy you're talking about, first of all, it's not felt. I don't think they feel this huge empathy for I don't know, you feel huge empathy for, I'm gonna start now about I mean, you feel huge empathy, Micah, for people in Ukraine, and you don't feel anything for the kids in Gaza. I mean, it's, I mean, shouldn't we be more balanced these days? Because those ones are dying, the other ones are dying as well. So there are people dying because of wars. So we should think about stopping those wars, not defending some of them. I mean, we are defending what serves us these days. You know, it's not like correctness on the market. So when you have this empathy, if you feel something for someone dying in war, you should feel the same for everyone that's dying on war, right? In a war, not
Mhm.
only for Ukraine or only for Gaza or so on. So it is a fake empathy, but they are manipulating you with this because people that are not, they don't have this self-confidence, that they don't believe in themselves, they didn't find themselves and so on. They're gonna go to the place that where they are incentivized to be this or that, like put in boxes. They're gonna put themselves in a box, looking for that huge empathy they are getting from it, and
Mhm.
it's fake.
I mean, it's almost self-destructive
Mm-hmm.
have this level of empathy because you can't once you've dropped yourself into this box, then trying to get out, the people that are holding you in the box basically attack you for trying to get out. So
Mm-hmm.
before we get out of here, I wanted to touch on a couple of practical tips for standing up for yourself. And one of them is, as we've mentioned this many times, is to be non-reactionary, be logical, be calm and firm, steady tone, and just kind of like maintaining that so that way we don't escalate the tension, right? Staying calm can bring somebody else to calmness, right? Even if they're already agitated. And unless you're dealing with a manipulative person and then they just get more riled up. In using these techniques, we want to make sure that we are calm the entire time as much as we can, especially when we're trying to de-escalate. Right now, if you're getting passionate and you're getting strong about something, I mean, I'm not gonna say anything negative about that. But it's when you get into the differences between the reactionary state of mind is that you'll start going off topic. The
Yeah,
person you're talking to will
exactly.
get you off
Mm-hmm.
topic, and then you'll be constantly defending the next statement that they're saying rather than the original topic that you're looking at. So that's something to look forward to. Using I statements. So you're going to want to use I statements as much as possible. I know me and you, we always use you because we're kind of like we're breaking the fourth wall because we're also having a podcast and a conversation, but we're also talking to you guys, the viewers out there. But if you are in a conversation where you're trying to have, convey a message, have a strong opinion, or, just speak your mind, using I statements and using I statements in the examples can be more constructive, more effective than accusing somebody of doing something else. Another thing is that I do this all the time. In my head, I will practice, I will rehearse, I will write a whole script for what I'm going to say, and I will constantly practice that before I, go out there and do it. This gives me a framework to deliver the message, to say what I'm going to say, so that way we stay on topic. I may even come up with counters to rebuttals ahead of time, so that way I've got a way to stay on topic. Hey, look, that's great if they try to get you off topic. You say, hey, look, okay, that's a good point. We'll talk about that later, but here's what we're talking about now. That conveys confidence, that delivers what you're trying to say, but it also keeps the conversation flowing in what you're trying to do. Rehearsal is a great asset if you know how to do it within yourself. Know your
Yeah,
limits.
that's great. This one is very, very good one. I never thought about it. I'm gonna try to think about it more. Very
Mhm.
good one.
And the lastly is knowing your limits. Be clear on what you're asking, conveying, and make sure that you don't waver off of that. So you want to make sure that you're strong in your statements, you're strong in what you're trying to say. And again, confidence is key. Working on that confidence comes with practice.
If you allow me to add something more, it's about being self-compassionate. It's very important to, and we talked about this in a podcast, like love yourself, nurture yourself, be compassionate with yourself. In the moment when you are doing these kind of things, your self-worth is growing, and you're not gonna accept these kind of behaviors around you. So self-compassion is very, very important. Self-love, taking care of yourself, loving yourself in a healthy way, and we talked about this in another podcast. These are very important if you're finding yourself in this kind of relationship.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of Life Chronicles and Deep Dives podcast. Please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the links in the description box below for our websites. Also, don't forget to drop a comment, say thank you to Cornelia for an excellent 25 episodes, co-host, executive producer, and editor. She's a great asset to this podcast.